everyone, welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we are going to make the most cheerful bag ever that is perfect for any travel, perfect for everyday use, and perfect if you need a last minute make, like right before you're about to go on a trip. Today, we're gonna make the mini travel sling pouch, and this pattern comes to us from Kandou Patterns. Now, let me just say, this is adorable. It is a mini sling. You wear it across your body like that. I'll put it on in just a moment. It is very, very simple. It is a great beginner to intermediate confident beginner sewing project. There are some techniques in here that can be a little bit more thought out if you're a beginner. So I would say this is more confident beginner intermediate level. However, it is very quick. We have a beautiful little zip pocket on the back. This is going to be a great place to put your ID, to put your passport, things like that. I'm considering this like a travel bag. On the front here, we have a slip pocket, and then we have this awesome diagonal zip pocket right here, which I think is so cool, and you can have a lot of fun with the material here. On the top, we have a little D-ring, and this is a great place to clip on something like a badge, or if you just have a couple keys, or you have like a little ID, something like that that you need quick access to. This is a great place to clip it. This is also a great way to hang the bag. If you're on like a coat hook, on a bag hook, something like that, you go to the restroom, you wanna hook your bag up so you don't have to hold it while you use the restroom. This is a great accessory to do that with. And then we have a nice long crossbody strap that's going to run along your back. So let me show you this on real quick. So I'm right-handed, and so the D-ring connector is over here on the bottom right. I'm gonna put it across my chest like this. I'm going to try to shorten this just a bit because it is a bit long for me. So I'm gonna shorten it to as short as it will go. And look at that. How stinking cute is that? Isn't that so sweet? And I love this yellow. I love the flowers. I love the checkered. It's such a sweet, quick, easy bag. Great bag, like I said, for travel. Great bag for college students, high school students, things like that. Great, great, great bag for moms, where we already have like a backpack or a big bag, especially if we're going out and about for like a vacation or something like that, where we have all the water bottles and the snacks. But this is just my wallet, my phone is right here. I can quickly access all of it without digging around in my big bag. Now, not only is this bag absolutely adorable, this is also the project for August's bag making bee club. But I'm gonna tell you something, this is not the only thing. It's not the only thing in the project box this month, because you get to make 2 of them. Isn't this just the cutest? For this month's bag making bee club, we were thinking this is like a duo. You have everything you need to make both of these. Everything you see here, except for the OklaRoots bag tags, was all from this month's bag making bee box. And it is so cute. So think of it, his and hers, yours and mine, us and theirs, hers and hers, his and his, you know, best friends, couples, mom and daughter, anything like that. Just like, I thought this was just so much fun, especially if you have a vacation coming up. I just know, like, if Bobby and I, my mom, were gonna go for like, you know, a few days down at Disney, or go on like a Disney cruise or something like that, or just travel, you know, maybe not Disney related, just travel on our own, this would be such a fun pairing. Because I know my mom, especially, she loves yellow, it's her favorite color, so she would take the yellow one, I would take the black and white checkered one, and then it's just like such a fun accessory for when you're traveling with someone you love. I love this so much. So let me just show you all the details, and these are the items that are in the box. So you'll have all the standard bag hardware. We have this beautiful bonded nylon on the outside. I'm mixing up the lining with the exterior. So this right here is the black lining that goes really with the other bag, but I decided to put over here on the bottom for some contrast. I have my yellow water-resistant canvas lining on the top, and then the bonded nylon with the flowers on the front and back. I don't know if you guys can see, but do you see that zipper pull, that little sunflower zipper pull? Isn't that the cutest? And then we have the sweetest sunflower bag tag on top. For the black and white checkered one, we have, again, bonded nylon front and back. The black right here you see on the top and the bottom, that is water-resistant canvas, which is also the lining material. The zipper pull on this one is a lightning bolt. You're gonna have that on the front and the back. You can mix up your webbings. I decided to use checkered webbing on the sunflower one, but you can use it on the other bag. Same thing with the zippers. The zipper on here is a checkered zipper. The zipper on this one is a black zipper. Mix this up however you like. Have a lot of fun with it. I wanted to make sure I pulled a little bit from each bag into the other one so that you know they're not matchy-matchy, but they are coordinating. They go together. We're going on a trip together. We're best friends. So thank you so much to Kandou Patterns, as always, for allowing us to feature your patterns on the YouTube channel. We love Kandou Patterns over here. I cannot keep up with her patterns, but every single time she comes out with a new one, I immediately grab it, download it, try to print it out, and make it right away. This is a great, great intro one. I feel like she has a lot of different types of bags, but her sling, she has a much larger sling with a lot more going on. That is a very popular pattern, but I know that it's not the best for beginners. So if you're more of a beginner or a confident beginner, intermediate, but you haven't tried a sling yet, I would suggest you try out this sling. It is so much fun, and I cannot rave about the material enough. This is great material. It's not going to be too hard on your sewing machine, but it is going to be durable enough to use every day and keep clean really easily. Thank you also to the Bag Making Bee Box for sponsoring today's video. I am absolutely obsessed with this box. It is so much fun to put together every month. I have so much fun with Gabby and Jade. We come up with the coolest ideas, in my opinion. We have the coolest patterns. If you're interested in joining along, I don't know if this box specifically is still available, so you will have to check with the Bag Making Bee Box. However, if you sign up, you're going to be really excited about the patterns we have coming out later this year. We have some projects that are going to blow your mind. I'm so excited. If you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, shoutouts, anything at all, leave them down in the comment section. I have done a lot of Kandou Patterns videos, so if there's one you're looking for, make sure you go check my Kandou Patterns playlist because it's probably on there. However, if not, leave a comment down below and let me know what you want to see. There's so many fun patterns. All right, guys. Let's get started. So you really don't need a lot of stuff for this pattern. I'm gonna show you more than you need because, again, the kit comes with enough to make 2 bags, but you're gonna pick just one of these to be the exterior. You need about a fat quarter of that. And then for your lining, you're also gonna need about a fat quarter of material. For the exterior, I am using a bonded nylon, which is really nice, easy to keep clean, very smooth, doesn't stretch, doesn't really fray, very easy to work with, great for domestic machines. And then for the lining, I'm using a water-resistant canvas, also very easy to keep clean, easy to work with, no interfacing or stabilizer required with these today. I'm gonna walk you through the bag using this flower checkered print. Just know that if you did get the box for this month, you have plenty of material to make both of them. I'm gonna show you, this is what I have left over from cutting out the material. Like, you're gonna have a lot of leftover if you cut your material like I did, and I'm gonna show you a cut sheet in just a moment. So once again, remember, I am showing you the material for 2 bags. You don't need this much stuff. This top piece here, the webbing, the zipper pulls, that's all for the checkered bag, which I'm not making on camera, I'll make off camera. But this right here on the bottom, this is what I'm gonna be using in today's tutorial. So you're gonna have at least 1.5 yards of 1-inch wide webbing. This is that fun checkered print. And again, if you have the box, mix this up however you want with the different bags. This is just my preference. Then you're gonna need about 1/2 yard of number 5 zipper tape. We're gonna use this to make 2 zippers today. So you're gonna have 2 zipper pulls to go with that. And then you're gonna have your hardware for your strap. So a strap slider and a swivel hook, both 1-inch wide. And then you're gonna have 2 D-rings, and these ones are each 3/4 of an inch wide. So this is everything you need for 1 bag. I'm just showing you, if you have the kit, you have all of this to play with to make 2 bags and switch it all around. It's very fun. I almost forgot to mention the adorable bag tag that comes in this box. You will only have 1 bag tag. You can put on either bag, however you'd like. All right, so here's pretty much all the other stuff. We're gonna have our thread today. I'm gonna be using a Tex 45 weight thread. This only goes through the needle, so it's for top stitching really. I do like a variegated thread. For the bobbin, I'll be using this polyester thread that I get from Joann's. My needle of choice, as always, is a Microtex 8012. I have some double-sided tape to help keep things together. A couple of marking tools, so an air erasing marker and a silver ink pen. Those are my go-to marking tools. I always have those on hand. A pair of snips, as always. And then a healthy supply of plastic clips. And then this is my personal bag tag that I'll be putting on the bag as well. All right, so here are all the pattern pieces. Now let me remind you, there's 2 sets of every single one of them here because I am making 2 bags, but I'm only making 1 on camera. However, I just wanted to show you all the pattern pieces. I'm just gonna go through each pattern piece for the bag that I'm making. However, I'm gonna put on the screen right now how I cut these pattern pieces out. You'll see that the material I used the most of was the black water resistant canvas. This is how I got a little bit of a color contrast between the different materials on the exterior of the bag. Mix this up however you'd like, have a lot of fun with it, but you can see I used quite a bit of the black, and then for the yellow water resistant canvas, that was also something I used a lot of because it's a lot of lining. When it comes to the 2 nylons that were included, we used very little of that. You have plenty. So feel free to mix this around, but I'm gonna show you what I'm doing specifically for the flower bag. Okay, so for the flower bag, the lower front is going to be this black water resistant canvas. The mid front, which is really what you see the most of, is going to be that fun checkered flower print. And the upper front is going to be the yellow water resistant canvas. For bag number 2, the lower front is once again going to be that black water resistant canvas. The mid front is going to be just the checkered print, and the upper front is going to be the black water resistant canvas. All right, back to bag number 1 that we're making today. The front zipper pocket lining is going to be 2 cuts of the yellow water resistant canvas. Make sure these are mirrored. That's the number 1 tip here. Make sure they're mirrored. Then for the slip pocket lining, you're gonna have 2 cuts of your lining material. Once again, that yellow canvas. And then for the back panel, you're going to use your exterior, which is for me this yellow checkered print. Also make sure you have a small cut. The measurement for this is in the pattern. This is gonna be for 2 D-ring connectors. So it's 1 piece of material that you'll use to make 2 D-ring connectors. And just to keep showing you everything, here is the front zipper pocket lining for bag number 2. It's 2 cuts of the black water resistant canvas, 2 cuts of the lining for the slip pocket lining, and then the back panel using just the checkered print. Again, this is all for bag number 2, which we are doing off camera. And then finally, we have the back zipper pocket lining. The one piece of advice I have for you with this is that this is not symmetrical. It's got these little notches on the top. So when you trace this pattern piece, make sure you're tracing it on the right side of your material. You need to have it pattern piece right side up, material right side up. If you don't do it, that's okay. It's not that big of a deal if these little tiny notches don't line up perfectly with the bag. But if you want to, if you want to use it for why they're there, then make sure it's right side up. You're gonna have 2 cuts of lining for that. So for my flower bag, I'm gonna have the yellow water resistant canvas, and then for my second bag, I'm just using the black water resistant canvas. Okay, so let's get started with the D-ring tabs. Grab your cut of material for the D-ring tab, and on the back side, mark a midpoint line going right along the center, longwise. Now I'm gonna grab some double-sided tape here, and I'm just gonna run it right over that mark. So this is 1/4 inch wide double-sided tape. I find this is plenty wide for this. So I'm just gonna cover that mark with the tape, and then remove the paper from that tape, and fold those long raw edges back, wrong sides together, so that they meet up with that midpoint line and they get stuck to that tape. So do this for both long raw edge. All right, and then you can take your little tab here and you can fold it in half, and then make sure it stays nice and flat, and then right at that fold, grab some scissors and just cut it into 2 pieces. Then you're gonna take it and wrap it around the end of one of your D-rings. Grab a clip and clip it in place. So again, it's the wrong side of the tabs going around the flat middle bar. There we go. Okay, now we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and we're just gonna stitch right along the raw clipped edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, once these are prepared, you can set them to the side for just a moment. Okay, so now let's prepare this mid-front pocket. So I'm gonna flip it over so I'm looking at the wrong side, and then I'm gonna grab my template piece and I'm gonna lay it over the back of it, and I wanna mark a couple of things. First, I wanna mark where the fold line is. So I'm just gonna mark the sides of my material right where the fold line, dashed line is. And those are marks that I need to be able to see from both sides for a long period of time. So I'm going to just fold the material right on the edge where that mark is, and I'm gonna clip it with my scissors so that I have like a little triangle on the side here, that little notch. And that's gonna mean I can see this at all times. Okay, next what I'm gonna do, I'm going to mark the midpoint on the top and bottom. So I'm gonna fold my piece in half, sides together, so I just use my scissors again and mark the midpoint. You should always mark the midpoint of all your pieces before you get started. I don't do that, so I just mark it as I go along. There we go. Midpoint's marked. Now we want to mark this diagonal, and it has to be in the same direction, right side up. So when we flip, our exterior piece over, make sure you also flip your pattern piece over. So you're looking at the wrong side of it, okay? So I transferred some of the marks to the back side of my pattern piece right here. So you can see, if I kind of get some light on this, the diagonal goes like this from the back side. So lining up all the corners and all the edges, I'm gonna go on the side over here and I'm gonna mark the first part of the diagonal, and then I'm gonna go down to the right side over here and I'm gonna mark the second part of the diagonal, just like that. Then I'm gonna grab a ruler and I'm going to connect these two lines using my ruler. All right, once you have that line drawn, you can continue using your ruler or a pair of scissors and you're just gonna cut right along that line. So now when I flip these two pieces over, this is how it should look, which is exactly how the diagonal is on the printout. So now this is what you should have for your middle. So now we're gonna call this the upper middle and the lower middle moving forward. Now what we wanna do is attach the lower front to that lower middle. So I like to just kind of have it all laid out like this so I can see what I'm doing so I don't get too turned around. So I'm just gonna work on these two bottom pieces right here and I can just push the upper middle to the side. I'm gonna flip my lower front right side together with the middle and I'm gonna line up their two straight edges like right here on the bottom. I'm gonna grab some clips and I'm going to clip along this straight edge. Now we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and we're gonna sew along this straight clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. All right, so now I'm going to just clip these corners at about a 45-degree angle to reduce bulk. And I'm gonna flip this over and I'm going to push the bottom panel up so that the seam is behind it. So if you flip this around, bottom panel goes down and the seam is behind the bottom panel. Now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and I'm just going to top stitch right over this bottom panel at the seam at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now I'm going to grab my zipper tape, and the zipper tape that comes in the kit is for both of them. So I'm just going to fold it in half and cut it. They need to each be at least 9 inches long. Then I'm going to grab one of my zipper pulls. I love these zipper pulls with the flower on it. And I'm just going to attach a zipper pull to the zipper teeth. Okay, so now we want to attach the zipper to our panel. So with our panel that we have top stitched laying right side up, we're going to grab our zipper and we're going to lay it right side down. Now, if you want to find the midpoints on the zipper tape and the midpoint along this line here, you definitely can if that's helpful, or you can just kind of eyeball this. You need to make sure you have a little bit of overhang on both sides. Don't let this one down here kind of line up on the edge and then you don't have the overhang. You need to have overhang on the bottom side of the zipper tape on both sides of your panel. So just kind of move it around to get it where you want, and then you can clip it in place. You could also use double-sided tape here if you'd like. Maybe I would use like an 1/8 of an inch wide double-sided tape to hold this down. If that helps you keep it in place, then go ahead and do that. Okay, for this one, I'm going to baste it down at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So you can baste it down or you can sew it down at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just later, we will be sewing the lining on at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I have a tendency to have those threads show in the end, so I'm just gonna baste it down. The benefit of using the 1/4 inch seam allowance now is that you can trim down some of the bulk later. I find the material is not too bulky in the end, so I'm okay with just leaving it and doing the 1/8 of an inch baste. Okay, you can set this to the side for just a moment. So now grab your two front zipper pocket lining panels. Now you gotta pay attention here. Lay them both wrong sides up, okay? Lay them both wrong sides up, making kind of a V shape, just like this. See? Wrong sides up. Now, on the right one over here, where the right side is higher than the left side, when it's wrong side up, we're going to trim off the top edge by a 1/2 of an inch. So I'm just going to use my ruler and I'm going to line it up along this top edge here, along the diagonal, and a rotary cutter, and I'm just going to trim a 1/2 of an inch off the top of this. So you see this is my little cutting mat, but you see? It just took off that 1/2 of an inch. The one on the left here, we don't mess with that one. Just the right piece over here. So take the left one and put it to the side for now. And we're gonna be working on the one that we trimmed down. So you can get rid of that scrap. And then grab your zipper panel that you've been working on. And with this still wrong side up, right side down, we're gonna overlay the lining right over the top of that zipper and line it up with the exterior edge to edge. So just use clips here to find the corners and line those up and clip together. So it's right side down against the wrong side of the zipper tape. And now we're going to sew along this at a generous 1/4 inch seam allowance. So if you did sew down the zipper to the exterior using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. This needs to be further than that. If you don't sew it further than that first stitching, you're going to see the stitches in the end. So 1/4 inch seam allowance, make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, now if you want to trim down some of the material on the corners here, not the zipper, just the exterior and the lining materials, you can do that. Just those little corner pieces there. If you basted it down at 1/8 of an inch on the exterior, you probably can't trim it down, which is fine. Don't worry about it. We'll be able to clean it up later. Okay, so now I'm going to take the lining and I'm going to flip it up and away from the material. The pattern suggests now is a good time to add a bag tag on the bottom here, so that's what I'm going to do. So I've got my bag tag here, and I want it to be as centered as possible. So I'm going to fold this in half. If you haven't marked the midpoint on the bottom of your lower panel yet, you should probably do that. So I'm just going to fold it and pinch and mark the midpoint there. And I'm going to grab some double-sided tape and add it to the back of my bag tag. And then using a ruler, I'm measuring about 1.5 inch up from the bottom edge of my lower panel, centered, and that's where I'm putting my bag tag. It is pretty close to that seam, but I'm okay with that. You can center it more here if you like, just don't forget you will have a seam running along the bottom here. So now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and I'm going to top stitch along all 4 edges of my bag tag at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, once you have your tag on there, if you prefer to do that, you're going to pull the lining and the exteriors wrong sides together, grab your clips, and let's just line up the bottom edges and the corners so that it's all nice and straight. And then also work on the sides, lining up the sides, and we will deal with the zipper seam in just a moment. So I'm just going along both sides here, lining them up. Okay, now I'm just going to kind of pull on my zipper. And I'm going to flatten out the seam right by the zipper tape. Now, if you are using material that you can use an iron on, like quill cotton or anything like that, go ahead and iron this. You can iron the nylon, but I would still cover it with some sort of a scrap piece of quill cotton pressing cloth, or you can just finger press it, or you can use a pressing tool. But once you get it nice and flat by the zipper, we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch right along the seam at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, now you're going to grab your other lining panel, the one we did not trim down, and with the zipper unit facing lining side up, so the zipper is wrong side up, you're going to take your lining panel and you're going to lay the remaining one right side down, wrong side up, and then just line it up right along that edge of the zipper. So I'm going to focus on matching up the sides with the sides that are already sewn onto the zipper and that top diagonal with the edge of my zipper tape. You don't really have anything to line it up with on the other side, so just focus on the sides here of what's already sewn to the zipper and that top edge of your zipper tape and clip along that zipper. All right, so now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine. I'm going to baste along the top clipped edge of my zipper tape at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, once you have the zipper basted on, you can then go ahead and just baste around the remaining sides and bottom, holding together the exterior and the 2 lining panels all at about 1/4 inch seam allowance. So once you have this all basted in place, grab the top middle panel and you're going to lay it right side up, and the bottom diagonal edge is going to meet up with those zipper teeth. So just lay it so it meets up with the zipper teeth and the sides of the top match up with the sides on the bottom. So kind of push this around and then grab a small ruler and use that to help you line up the top and the bottom sides. All right, once you have those lined up, grab a marking tool and mark along the zipper tape right along your ruler. You're just trying to trim down your zipper tape so this is all nice and even. So I'm going to do the same thing on the right side over here. Just lining up the edges and then marking on the zipper tape where the edges will come together. Once you have those marks in place, you can grab some scissors and trim down your zipper tape. Or honestly, you could just leave the marks and attach the top with those marks there and then trim this down later. It's up to you, but I'm going to trim down the zipper tape now. There we go. Okay, so now take your top middle piece and you're going to lay it right side down over your zipper tape. And when we do this, we want a little bit of a dog ear on each side. So over here on the right side where the zipper tape is, we want that to overhang by about 1/4 of an inch. I'm just using my ruler to measure 1/4 of an inch in from that zipper tape And then I'm just going to clip my exterior material right sides together with that zipper all the way down to the other side. And once I get to the left side over here, if I measure the overhang, I should have about 1/4 of an inch overhang on the left side as well. If it's not exact, that's okay. I find mine is always a little bit off kilter, and it still turns out fine. That's why you have, you know, a bigger seam allowance at 3/8 of an inch, so it will help make up for any bits that aren't totally perfectly centered. So now let's sew along this clipped edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, making sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Once you have it stitched in place, press that top panel up so it's right side up, and then however you need to press this seam, go ahead and do that. I'm just using my fingers to press it, but again, if you want to use an iron or a pressing tool, go ahead and do that. And then once it's nice and flat, we're going to top stitch along this top panel right by the zipper at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, if you have any little overhang, go ahead and trim those down so it's nice and neat now. Now we're going to do the front slip pocket, so grab your 2 slip pocket lining pieces. And if you haven't, let's mark some midpoints. So we're going to mark the midpoint along the top edge of our middle panel here, which I've already done. Look at me. And then we're going to mark the midpoint along the top short edge of one of our lining panels. And then with that lining panel that has the midpoint mark, we're going to lay it right side down, right sides together with our middle panel here, and we're going to match up those midpoint marks and clip along that top short edge. So now we're going to sew along this top clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure you're back stitching at the beginning and the end. All right, so now take your lining and press it up so that the seam is behind the lining. And now we're going to skip a couple steps because we're not doing the fastener tab. We don't have the hardware for it, and honestly, we don't need it. This is just going to be a simple slip pocket with no snap. If you wanted to add the snap, the instructions are in the pattern to do that. However, we are skipping that. So I'm going to take my middle panel here and just set it to the side for a moment. And I'm going to take my remaining lining slip pocket and my upper front panel, and they're both the same material. And I'm going to mark the midpoint along the top and bottom edges of this upper front panel. Once again, just using scissors. And I'm going to mark the midpoint along the top edge of my slip pocket, which is the short edge. Now, with the top panel and the slip pocket panel right sides together, we're going to overlay them along the short edge just like this. So my top panel is upside down. This is the top of the top panel. So it's upside down. My slip pocket is going to go right over it just like that. Line up those midpoint marks and clip these right sides together. And now we're going to sew along this clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. So now pull down that lining panel so that the seam is behind the lining piece, which is that rectangle piece, and give it a good press. If you want to use an iron, use an iron. If you want to use your fingers, use your fingers. Whatever is easiest for you. So press it so it's just like this. So the seam is behind the lining panel, and now we're going to top stitch right along the top of this lining panel at the seam at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, this next part is pretty cool. Take your lining with the top panel and lay it right side down so that your 2 lining slip pockets are now right sides together and the top and the middle are right sides together. And grab some clips, and starting with the top corners of these lining panels, clip these lining panels together, lining up all the edges. All right, so now keeping everything very flat, we're going to sew along the sides and the short edge of these lining panels at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You're going to start and stop at the stitching that's on the back of your top flap here. So where you can see the stitching, that's where you're going to start and back stitch at the beginning and the end of this, okay? 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. Alrighty, once that's sewn together, cut these corners down at a 45-degree angle. And now you're going to flip the lining behind the bottom main panel and flipping the top panel up. Now, remember when you made those little notches on the sides of the top part of the middle here? We're going to use those notches and we're going to fold at those notches. So it's not like this. See how the seam is right here at the top? The seam between the slip lining panel and the middle panel goes down below, just like that. So I like to pinch where those notches are and add a clip right along the top edge of my exterior material. And you should notice when you pinch there and you lay it down over the flap, it should line up with the edge of the flap. It should come to meet the edge of the flap. So you can see I'm just pinching it, folding it, pressing it down to meet up with the flap. There we go. So this is what it should look like now. Now, this is optional, but if you really want to make sure that this top folded piece here stays nice and flat, doesn't start to roll or anything like that, you can add some clips along that edge right there, because now you know where it needs to fold, that's for sure. So you can remove the clip from the flap. So we just have the clips on this folded top edge here. Pull the flap back just like that. So you see the flap is out of the way. We're only looking at the top edge. This is just a fold. You can see the seam between the lining and the middle exterior is down below. And with the flap behind you and out of the way, you can top stitch along this clipped folded edge at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. That's just gonna hold it in place and prevent it from kind of getting all loosey-goosey. This is optional, but it is something I prefer to do. Okay, once you have that top stitch, now once again, just lay it all out. And it should just naturally lay down right on top of the flap, just like this. And now you can just go baste along the corners here where the top of your middle overhangs the top of your bag. And just baste those down at about an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, and then if you're doing the snap, you'll have your snap attached right here and you'll finish doing the hardware. I'm not doing the snap, however, I am going to put my little sunflower tag right here. So I'm going to grab my little sunflower tag and some double-sided tape. I'm going to add the tape to the back of it. I'm going to measure down about 2.5 inches from the midpoint on the top of my bag. And I'm going to just add my, well, maybe 2 inches. I'll go 2 inches from the top. I feel like 2.5 is too low. All right, so 2 inches from the top, center my tag. There we go. How cute is that? So now I'm going to take my bag to the sewing machine. I'm going to top stitch along this tag at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, it's coming along so nicely. So now we're going to attach our little D-rings. So one D-ring is going to be attached along the top edge here. So the raw edge is going to be centered with that midpoint mark on the top of your bag, and just clip that in place. And the other D-ring, depending if you're going to be wearing it to across your chest to the right or left, that's going to determine where this other one goes. I'm going to put mine on the bottom left here, and it's going to be just below the top stitching on this bottom panel. So just like that. So you can have it come right up to the fold of the seam if you want, but I like it just below the top stitching because I feel like it's less bulky. So I'm going to put it right there. So the pattern does say that the ring tab should be placed on the lower left corner if the person is right-handed, on the lower right corner if the person wearing it is left-handed. So if you know that, then make the adjustments. So now I'm going to take these to the sewing machine. I'm going to sew along both the edges of our little D-ring tabs here at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, the front of your bag is done. You can set this to the side. All right, so now we're going to do the back zipper pocket lining. So grab one of your lining panels and your template, and on the wrong side of your lining panel, you're going to transfer this 7" by 1/2 inch window to the wrong side. So if you want to measure, that's what I did, just kind of measure down from the midpoint and draw your window, or you can trace this using the corners or even cutting this out, whatever is easiest for you. You just want to get this transferred to the wrong side of your lining panel. So with the back panel right side up, this is the exterior material, I'm going to grab my template and I'm going to lay it right side up over it, just like this. And I want to transfer specifically this little mark over here on the right. So I'm going to lift this up and transfer that mark over. It's a little hard to see on my material, but I can find it. And then using that mark, I have my exterior right side up, and I'm going to take my lining with the window and I'm going to lay it right side down. And I'm going to match up my midpoint mark on the top of my lining panel with that mark I just made on the edge. And then I'm going to clip these together. So remember, they are right sides together. And if you find that the little corners don't line up correctly, it is what it is, you know? I'm not sure. I can't seem to do it right, so it's okay if the little, you know, angles don't match up perfectly. Okay, so now we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew along this rectangle here. So not the clipped edge. Don't worry about that. That's just to hold it in place. We're going to sew right over the markings for this inner 7" rectangle. Make sure your needle stops in all 4 corners and backstitch at the beginning and the end. All right, so now that that rectangle is sewn, grab a ruler and mark a midpoint going right along the center of that rectangle, and then use your marking tool to mark little triangles. So we're going from the corner of our stitching down to meet that midpoint line. You can have them go in by about 1/2 inch or so. Honestly, I don't measure it. I just make little triangles. So now grab a seam ripper and rip along that middle line just enough to get your scissors in there. And then grab your scissors and cut along that middle line until you get to the very tip of that triangle, and then veer off and go down the diagonal lines of that triangle all the way to the corner of those stitches. So you want to get as close as possible to those corners without cutting the thread. So I know that's a little tricky. This is always a little bit of a tricky way to do a pocket. All right, now you're going to flip the pocket in through that hole so that the lining and the exterior can be wrong sides together. Now, based on the material you're using, this can be a little tricky to get this really flat, and it is important that it is really flat so we can attach the zipper to it easily. So this is where if you want to iron, you can iron. If you want to tape, you can tape. A lot of times double-sided tape is really helpful here, but it can be a little hard to sew over. Let's see, I'm going to see if I can do this without ironing it. So I'm going to just line up the edges together, wrong sides together, and clip along the edge to try to flatten it out over here. And I'm just going to finger press along the other pieces. Okay, so that is going to work for me. It's nice and flat. I'm just finger pressing it. If you're worried that it's just a little too poofy and not flat enough for you, then just iron it. Press it down with an iron. Like I said, if you're using this nylon, I would cover it with a piece of quilt cotton first and then press it with the iron over the quilt cotton. I don't know if it's bad, but I don't like my iron directly touching the pretty side of the nylon. My iron can touch the back of it, but I don't like the iron touching the front. I don't know if that's a thing or not, but to me, it's a thing. So now grab your remaining zipper tape, and if you have not already done so, add your zipper pull to it, and then grab some double-sided tape and add double-sided tape along both outer long edges. So right on the edge, not close to the teeth at all. We don't want to see this tape in the end. It'll be a mess to try to pull out if we had to do that. So get it right on the edge. Okay, so now just make sure you know whenever this zipper closes, we want it to go up. So it closes going up, it opens going down. So rotate everything so that that happens. I'm going to remove the tape from the top edge of my zipper, just like that. And then I'm going to overlay my window over my zipper, making sure I have overhang on both sides. And I want the teeth to run directly down the middle, just like that. And then I'm going to lift up everything, move my zipper pull into that window so it's not going to get stuck in the tape. It'll move and still get stuck in the tape. It does every time. Then I'm going to remove the paper from the tape and fold down the bottom edge here. And this is why I said it's important to have everything nice and pressed flat, because this can get a little tricky if everything is bubbling up and moving around on you. So just do your best here to get it all lined up nice and flat so that the zipper teeth run right down the center of that opening. There we go. And remember, zipper when it closes goes up. This is looking so cute. Okay, so now we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch outside of this little window at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I do like to back stitch at the beginning and the end, and I do prefer to back stitch over the teeth as well, just so as we're opening and closing the zipper over time, the thread doesn't break. Look at that little zipper flower in a bed of flowers. It's so cute. Okay, this next part is optional. I will show it to you. It's to conceal the raw edges of your zipper tape on the bottom here if you want to. It's not required, but if you want to, you can. You can take your lining panel here and you can wrap it up around the bottom edge of that zipper tape. So you kind of have to feel for it and just carefully wrap the lining around that bottom edge all the way. So we're just doing this on one side. We're not doing it on both sides. You see how I'm adding these little clips here? It's a tight fit. So then what you do is you pull the lining and the exterior away, and this is what you're looking at, just that little bit of an edge here. And you can just sew over this at about an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and what it does is it just tucks that bottom edge of the zipper tape in place so you don't see it when you're using the bag. Totally optional. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. But I'm going to go ahead and do it. Just make sure you use a zipper foot when you're sewing this down. Okay, so now you see when you pull the exterior back and the lining back, it's nice and clean. On the inside, you don't see the raw edge of the tape on this bottom piece here. So now you're going to grab your remaining lining pocket panel and you're going to lay it right side down over the back of your zipper and just line it up with the top and the side edges. and is going to be longer than the one that's already attached. That's expected. So now open this up so that the shorter lining is on top, and then just grab some scissors and trim down the overhang from the longer lining panel. And it might not be perfectly straight, it might be a little funny looking, that is totally fine, totally fine. And then just clip the remaining sides, just like this. So now we're gonna take this to sewing machine, and with the exterior facing up, we're gonna move the exterior out of the way, and we're gonna sew along the sides of the lining panels, each at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure you're back stitching at the beginning and the end. You're not sewing along the bottom straight edge or the top edge yet, just the sides and over the zipper, 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, once you have these sewn down, you can trim the corners down to a 45-degree angle, and then you can trim down the seam allowance in half, honestly, just trim it down. And then wherever you trim down the zipper, you're gonna wanna grab a lighter and just melt the end of the zipper tape, because we don't want the zipper tape fraying. So if you don't trim down the zipper tape, that's fine too. Just make sure, again, you do melt the end of it so it doesn't fray. So I just go over the edge like that. And now make sure the top edge here, or the side edge, depending on which way you're looking at it, is clipped, and you have both lining panels and the exterior panel all clipped together along the side. We're just going to baste along the side to hold it in place. So we're going to baste along the clipped edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, your back panel is done, so you can set this to the side. So now let's work on putting together the strap. You guys know how much I like to use rivets for straps, but since I'm trying to be better about only using what's in the box, I'm not going to use rivets. I'm going to show you how to sew this. So you're going to take your slider, which is this fun little piece here, and you're going to have one end of your webbing go up and over that middle bar, just like that. Now I like to fold over the edge of the webbing by about 1 inch or so. So the raw edge is going to tuck in like that, and then I'm going to fold it over again by about 1 1/4 inch. Just like this. A good amount folded over, because I am going to be sewing this. So now I can grab a couple clips to hold it in place. If you want to draw out a little rectangle, or even like a rectangle with an X in it, over this fold over area, so you can just trace it with your sewing machine, you can do that. Or if you want to live on the edge, you can do what I do, and I'm just going to kind of eyeball this, and I'm going to sew a little box right over this folded over bit. So you see I don't have any overhang on the bottom here. It's folded in. It should be fine on your machine, even if it's a domestic machine. So I'm just going to do a little box right over the folded edge here on my webbing to hold it in place. Okay, so now with the back of your strap where that fold is, keep your strap facing that way, flatten it out, grab your swivel hook, and with your swivel side down, insert the webbing through the swivel hook. And then you're gonna bring your webbing back towards the slider, so fold it in half. Again, we're looking at the wrong side of the webbing where the fold over is. You're gonna go up the slider on that side where the fold over is, and over that middle bar and out the other end. So this is what it should look like now. On the fold, you have your swivel hook. In the center, you have your slider, and then on the edge, you have just a raw end here. So now grab your front panel and lay it right side up, and let's move this slider up towards the top here so we can have a better look at it. You're gonna take your webbing, and with the slider facing right side down, so we're looking at the back of our slider, you're going to attach your webbing over your little D-ring connector here on the top. So center it over that D-ring connector. Use clips if you need it, and have it centered just like this. And this is how it should look. The slider hardware is right side down, and then you have it centered like that. Go ahead and sew this down at a 1/4 inch seam allowance to secure it. All right, so now we just have to sew it all together. We gotta make sure nothing gets in the way. So let's grab our strap. This is probably the biggest hazard, is this strap. If you have a rubber band, use a rubber band to hold this all together. All right, so I'm just gonna kind of fold it over on itself a few times and add my rubber band to this. All right, so there's that. And then on the back of the back panel, pull your lining pocket up like this and just clip the sides so that you don't accidentally sew this in. We are turning the bag out through that hole on the bottom of this back lining pocket, so make sure it doesn't get sewn in anywhere. Also make sure you open up the zipper on the back panel. That's important. Okay, so now we're just gonna take our front panel and our back panel, and we're gonna lay them right sides together. You're gonna have to smush it down a bit. and line up all the edges. If you have midpoints marked, use that to help you line up all the midpoints. Otherwise, just go around lining up all the edges and all the corners. Take your time with this. All right, once you have it all clipped together, we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew along the entire clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Take your time here. I do like to use a zipper foot because it is so bulky. I find that it helps me be able to get closer and not fight the bulk so much. So just go slow, 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. All right, once you have it all sewn together, if you're using any sort of really thick material, you might want to do a second row of stitching. So a second row of stitching just outside, just a tad bit closer to the raw edges around the entire bag, because when you turn this out, you don't want those stitches to be seen in the end. But my material is lightweight enough. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go around and I'm going to trim down my corners. Again, if you're using thick material here, you might not want to trim it down too much, and instead you might want to just snip into the corners so the material can spread. But with mine, I think I'll be okay. Just trimming down. Don't trim down any tabs though. Anywhere where you have tabs for your D-rings or anything like that, don't trim those down. All right, now I'm just gonna open up the pocket and flip this all right side out. So make sure you pull that pocket out and put your hand inside and really get in there to poke out all the corners. If you have any sort of a turning tool, you might want to use that to get into the corners on the top here, because you do have a little bit of a sharper corner up here, so you can just kind of gently poke those out. Okay, so once you have all your corners poked out, then we can work on the sides and the bottom. But first, let's close up the hole in this lining. So pull your lining out, and then fold the lining raw edge down by about 3/8 to 1/2 of an inch. Fold it down a good amount and just kind of push it in there. I'm not measuring anything, but I am folding it down a decent amount. And then with it folded in, I'm going to grab my clips and I'm going to clip along that folded edge to hold it all together, because we don't want any raw bits of material showing in the end. Okay, once you have that folded and looking neat, go ahead and top stitch right along this clipped edge at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I do suggest back stitching at the beginning and the end. All right, once you have that top stitch, just tuck in that lining and poke out the corners. There we go. Now, zip up all your pockets, and if you want, you can take this to the iron and you can press along the edges to flatten it out really nicely. But I kind of like the little like poofy look. So then on the back here, remove your rubber band, straighten out your webbing, and then just use the swivel hook to clip it to the D-ring. And how cool is that? This is what it looks like from the back. And this is what it looks like from the front. How stinking cute is that? And this is just one of the bags that you have enough, you have more than enough to make the second one. For your friend, for your spouse, for yourself, for your family member, whoever. I mean, this is such a cute pattern, isn't it? It's so stinking cute, and you get to make 2 of them in the box this month. I hope you guys love making these as much as I do. They're so much fun, and they're quick. All right, guys, what do you think? It's a fun one to make, right? It's a really fun one. I'm gonna be honest, it looks complicated, and like right off the bat, I was like, I don't know. I mean, it looks like it's gonna take a while, but it doesn't. It's very quick to come together. I love that. I love a quick make. And if you wanna make this more advanced, you can definitely use beefier material. I get asked this question a lot, you know, like, can you do more difficult bags? Can you do more advanced level bags? And for the most part, sometimes, but I really do like to stick to more confident beginner intermediate level bags. That's kind of where I like to work. Those are the bags I personally like to make, and those are the ones I like to feature in videos. I try to make sure that every tutorial is accommodating to most skill levels. However, a lot of times the difference between a beginner bag and a more advanced bag is going to be the material that you're using. You know, you can have a lot of pockets and a lot of things on it, but that doesn't mean it's difficult. It just means it's more time consuming. But what makes a bag more difficult to make and makes it more professional looking is going to be the material you're using. If you're using quilt cotton, that's going to be easier to make a bag. However, it might have a more homemade look because it's quilt cotton, and quilt cotton kind of gets dirty easily and it's hard to keep clean and looking sleek. You use a bonded nylon, you're right there in the middle. It's gonna look professional, it's gonna be easy to keep clean, but it's gonna be easier to sew. You want that really professional look, you're gonna move to vinyl. Now vinyl though is going to be more difficult. These seams are going to be a lot thicker, so you're gonna be putting a lot more pressure on your machine, which is going to be a more advanced make. So if you're wondering like, what if I wanna do a more advanced bag? Just make it in other material. Try a vinyl, try a faux leather. That's going to look much more professional than say a quilt cotton bag, but it is going to be more challenging as well. I hope you love making this with me today. If you make one of these and you post it on social media, please tag me. I want to see like every single version out there. I want to make so many of these. I love these checkered. This is perfect for fall. This is like perfect going into fall, especially fall travel, fall back to school, fall running all the errands all the time for everybody and just needing what I need right here. This is perfect for that. However, when I'm still in summer, and so like I would love to see this in a bunch of neons, just like all different neon colors all over it. I think that would look so cool. I hope you're having a great day. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye guys.